Welcome to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet with Ryan Potterack from Potterack Capital Advisory. You have unique values, objectives, fears, life experiences, and biases. Any financial professional who ignores or minimizes the importance of your story may not be able to help you achieve your ideal outcomes or hit your goals. It's time to experience the PCA difference. In this podcast, we help business executives, soon-to-be retirees, and solutions-based individuals overcome the anxiety leading up to their upcoming years. We do this by initiating in-depth discussions about the financial aspects of retirement, like tax planning and asset allocation, alongside, and often overlooked, personal and lifestyle aspects. Join us for this journey where we explore retirement from a contrarian point of view, as Ryan draws from years of experience and qualified guest professionals to help you explore the true purpose of your money in retirement and the impact you want to make in your golden years. Ryan Potterack and Alec Quaid offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Private Advisor Group and Potterack Capital Advisory are separate entities. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized legal or tax advice. Please consult your legal or tax advisor regarding your specific situation.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Ryan Potterack here on my podcast, Making It Count. Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet, and I'm kind of jumping in first, Sharice, but you're the host or the hostess, Sharice McQuarrie. What are we going to talk about today, Sharice?
The common question that a lot of people have, do I or do I not pay off my mortgage?
Oh, boy. Probably
pretty exciting stuff.
Well, in financial planning in my career that has been more than 3 decades, it's one of the more emotional decisions that I see a couple or individual grapple with in my discussion with them on their wealth and their financial planning. So I'll do my best. Let's give it a shot.
Why is it emotional?
I think some of it stems from family and I'll call it historical America, and the American dream is to have, pay off the home. It is, I don't know. I think it's just been generationally ingrained that paying off the home is in and of itself a good thing. And in a silo, I think it's almost inarguable. Yeah, if my house was paid off today, I'd feel good about it. However, the money's got to come from somewhere. If you pull one lever of financial planning and maybe really hard, it's going to be consequential to other areas. So the best in my view, the most effective way to approach any decision, including whether to pay off the mortgage quickly or ahead of time, is best made in the context of your overall situation. And I don't know. It's emotional, so it's not easy to describe logically.
Right. What are the factors to consider?
So by definition, if somebody has a mortgage, they have a loan to a bank or credit union at a specific interest rate, and then there's specific terms around the length of the mortgage. So maybe there's a 30-year mortgage at X percent, and sometimes people will typically do a couple different things. One is they'll say, "Hey, we'll put extra money towards the mortgage." There's banks and credit unions often send these promotional letters out. Hey, if you just make an extra payment a year, you'll pay off the mortgage in 24 years or something like that. Well, being a critical thinker, if I'm the bank, do I want my clients to send me money sooner or later? Sooner wins, okay? So yes, it's mathematically true that if you put more money towards any mortgage, you will pay it off faster. But the money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just appear magically from the clouds. So it goes to, if your mortgage interest rate which is key to this decision. If let's just say right now, people have a mortgage from 2000, maybe 2001-ish, where it's 3% or even under 4%. So I'll stick to that. Let's just say they have a mortgage at 4%. So putting an extra dollar or any amount of money towards the mortgage is mathematically equivalent to a 4% rate of return. The interest that anybody is paying on their outstanding mortgage is based on their balance multiplied times the interest rate. So if you put one more extra dollar towards the mortgage, that's a dollar you don't pay 4% on. So the absence of that cost is equivalent to earning 4% somewhere else. Now, in this environment, in this interest rate environment where there are some very, very conservative options like, a bond, even CDs that are paying 4% or more. Let's say that there's a conservative investment vehicle that's paying 5% and you own a mortgage at 4%. So taking money out of the 5% investment to pay off a 4% debt puts you 1% behind. Because if you just kept the 5% investment, you'd have 4% going out the back door by itself. Sure, nobody wants costs, but you've got 5% coming through the front door. That 1% is your profit in the middle. If the investor, the couple or the individual, has money set aside for longer term, and they believe and have right to believe that a long-term rate of return of 7, 8, 9% is possible, why would you pull money out you expect to earn 7, 8, or 9 to pay off 4? So logically, it makes no sense, because the other aspect of it is when you put money towards a mortgage, you can't get that money's no longer liquid. You can't get the money back. You can't make extra payments towards the bank, towards the mortgage for 3 or 4 years, then get in a difficult position, employment change, whatever, and go to the bank. We've been sending you an extra $500 for 3 years. Could we kind of get that extra 18,000 back because we're going through a tough road, and maybe with a little bit of interest? No. You'd have to go through a loan process. Oh, you can't get a loan when you're not employed? So all things being equal, if you had a 4% investment and a 4% mortgage where it would be a tie, you have more flexibility keeping the money liquid in your investments that you control instead of giving it to the bank or credit union and thus giving up your control. So the process, Sharice, is I go through the benefits and limitations of alternative choices. Just kind of march them through that, and then I never forget whose money it is. So if I'm comfortable that they understand the trade-offs, people make illogical decisions all the time. Certainly I do. I'm quite sure that you do. But if it's an informed logical decision, just because they feel better to pay their mortgage down quicker, even though it's a mortgage at 3%, if they know the price of it, great.
Yeah, it's a milestone.
Yeah,
I think, for people. How does cash flow come into play there? Because that's what when we pay off debt, we're like, oh yeah, that's an extra $500.
Yeah, there's if you have, the thing about a mortgage is, or typically a mortgage has a level premium for the entire length of time.
Right.
So if somebody's on the back end of a mortgage, whether it's a 15 or 30 or whatever the term of it is, they might be in a position where let's say they had a $700,000 mortgage years ago. Now the mortgage is $100,000, but the payment's the same as when they owed $700,000. So that's one way we would look at it as, okay, $100,000 in relative terms creates a lot of cash flow. If they do have other pots of money, maybe even if it's higher interest rate, but that can free up a lot of cash flow in that way. There's also a situation where as people get further along in life, at a lot of employment situations, they have a lot of money in 401ks or IRAs. So we might also get a discussion is like, well, if you really value paying off the mortgage, you could do it tomorrow. Well, what do you mean? Well, no, you've got 401k and the traditional IRA. You could pay it off tomorrow. But of course, taking out a large chunk, like a couple $100,000 from a taxable IRA, well, if they have $200,000 mortgage, they might have to take out as much as $300,000 to pay the taxes. So if it's necessary to help an individual or couple kind of break their tunnel vision, I might go that route. If they're so focused on the greatness of paying off the mortgage, okay, well, you could. Well, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd pay all those taxes. Okay, now we're starting to enter into the area of choices.
Yeah, it is very
a little astray of you there.
No, it is we don't have a mortgage. We didn't pay it off. We sold our house and bought one that didn't require a mortgage, which is nice every month not to have a mortgage, and we had a mortgage our whole life. So
Yeah.
it makes me think of that. And also I know you have some crazy ideas about mortgages, because you used to be I'm never going to own a home guy. I know you long enough. I've known you long enough to know all of your iterations, and now you just buy houses like crazy. But um,
One at a time.
I'm thinking about the actual cost of a mortgage, which I'd like to just I'd like you to share your take on the cost of a mortgage, because I didn't think of it that way before I knew you.
Well, there's a lot of layers to it. I mean, with Dawn and I, we didn't map it out this way, but we've been together for 28 years and we've never had the same street address for more than 2 years and a couple of months. And so in that situation, with the acquisition costs and the process to get a house, have a mortgage, and then the ongoing ownership of real estate taxes, which aren't in play if you're renting, for example.
Right.
And then the illiquidity of, okay, when we want to move or we want to switch gears for whatever reason, we can't snap our fingers and sell the house like we can if it's an investment account. We can snap our fingers and change the purpose for our savings. So that's it. That is one element where I think people are well served considering other ways. Because if you have a house, whether you have a mortgage on it or you're renting it, it's the same house.
Right.
The walls are the same color and the size is the same and the neighborhood's the same. And so a home principally is for living. That's its purpose. Usually at the back end of a decision to buy a homes in a particular neighborhood, et cetera, school district, they say, oh, well, this could be a good investment too. But I would say that no, a home is not a good investment by and large. However, for a lot of people, it just hasn't been my history. People hold on to a home for a long time. So if you hold on to any investment for a long time, the likelihood that there's going to be financial success go up. But also people typically look at, okay, I paid X for the house 10 years ago and I just sold it for Y. What they don't put in the calculation is the homeowner's insurance for 10 years. Now, when they replaced the roof, or they had the plumbers come over, or they paid all the real estate tax, all of that. If you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, there are a ton of expenses.
Yeah.
That are kind of a drag that people just simply look at. What did I buy? What did I sell it for? So I just it's more about critical thinking. There's definitely not, and as I go down this road, I want for our listeners, there's not a right or wrong decision. I'm not advocating anything, but if as a business person, if I give a bank a whole bunch of money, that is money I don't have for adding services for the clients that we serve, hiring and growing. So I think as a business person, there's additional incentive to allocate capital other places other than giving it to a bank, even if I was continuing to live there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, I think in what we've seen go on in the world with inflation going up again, having owning real estate is an inflation hedge. If we think back to 2019, so it is pretty current for everybody over the last 5 years, the market's gone all over the map and such, but the price of homes has skyrocketed. So for our listeners that currently own the home today that they owned in 2019 or 2020 have seen huge run-ups in value, probably, because obviously I don't have universal insight to every listener's home situation, but that goes right to net worth. That's a big chunk. Now in retirement, that could be downshifting. They no longer need the 4-bedroom house with 3,500 square feet. So I think that having a home can be a part of an overall portfolio. And it just so happens in inflationary times, real assets tend to perform well. So land, gold, commodities, things that are real tend to do well in an inflationary environment.
So if someone's unsure about whether to or not to pay off debt of any kind, is there I imagine you take them through a critical thinking process, which sadly a lot of people don't undergo a process like that, because there's all these old beliefs that our parents taught us that you need to own your own home because rent's throwing money away. Even though, in our case, we threw a lot of money away for a new roof, a new furnace, all of the taxes, property taxes and insurance. And, at a certain point in a home, everything seems to break down.
Yeah,
so
sure.
The longer you own it, the more times you're going to replace those things. So what do you find in your practice? Do people go through that critical thinking process without you?
No, very rare, very rare. And it is, I guess, a part of my approach in communication is to read the audience. And so if I sense that the individual or one of the individuals in a couple are becoming uncomfortable around the critical thinking challenge of, okay, is that the right thing to do to move $500 from an investment account to your mortgage to pay extra money towards the mortgage? Where my ultimate landing spot is that I understand paying off the mortgage by itself, again, in a silo is a great thing. I would just say that I would like it if you were in a position to pay off your mortgage. In other words, if you keep the flexibility, the money in an investment account or whatever, where you could wake up any given day and say, I've had the discussion with Ryan a bunch of times, and I just would feel better if we took the chunk of money and got rid of the mortgage. I can live with that. I can totally live with that if they're well informed and they understand the trade-offs. Right. So I draw a distinction between getting to a point where you're in a position where you can pay off the mortgage if you wanted to, but then let's just talk about, is that in your best interest, as from a fiduciary standpoint? And I would equate that with what we talk about in these podcasts quite often, is being in a position to retire is one thing that brings people a lot of comfort.
Yep.
Now, when you're in that position, your mindset can be totally different towards, well, what do I put up with at work and all that kind of stuff. So being retired generically is a good thing. Being in a position to retire and then making the choice, do I want to? That's what I would equate being in a position to pay off the mortgage, but do you really want to?
That's a good analogy.
Because to that person who might be getting a little bit uncomfortable, I believe I'm right there with them. I'm feeling that concern or that emotion that is, bottom line, probably freedom. That a financial institution doesn't have control over their life, but we don't have this obligation that we have to serve. But if we can just set that aside and say, we can get rid of that any day we want. However, then they can kind of focus on the choice itself.
It's freedom again.
Yeah, everything is about freedom, I think. At least that's where I come at it.
What haven't I asked you that I should have asked you about this topic?
Well, I guess I can, not to focus on the question, but a couple of thoughts. Knowing our history, Dawn and I, we look for mortgages that have the lowest interest rate, which our listeners are probably like, duh. But if it's a 5-year adjustable and I've never lived in a home for 3 years, then a 5-year adjustable for our situation, if it's a lower interest rate than a 30-year, is a prudent decision. Or even if, because again, if I don't give the money to the bank, I'm a business person. I can use that capital. I can deploy it in other ways, in my view, to earn a lot more rate of return. So even if there's loans, before the big real estate market downturn in 2008 and 9, there were a lot more mortgages that were interest only. To me, that was nirvana. If I pay the least amount, but I'm living in the same house with the authority to paint the walls whatever I want, use wallpaper when wallpaper was popular, or whatever it is, So I just would let the audience know that, like most other financial decisions, there may be the right answer for you that doesn't match your neighbor or your sibling's choice.
Such as a 15-year or a 30-year. That's another consideration.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all in the same pot of individual situations, which can't be predicted without a conversation.
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Also, what typically comes when people take out a mortgage is they'll get several offers within the first 90 days to buy life insurance to pay off the mortgage. Now, in and of itself, yeah, okay. If I was to die, would I want Dawn to have the mortgage paid off? Sure. But, it doesn't mean I want a life insurance policy specifically for that reason. So I would just say for people that get those offers, again, more big picture, because I know in my situation, if I was to die today, Dawn wouldn't want to live in the current house. And I have life insurance that's for anything she wants to spend it on. It's not a part of paying off the mortgage. I would want Dawn to have the freedom to do with the money whatever she would want to do with the money. So, but again, the industry, and I mean the financial industry, tends to stay in a lane with these, I'll call them sales pitches. You just bought a home. It's a huge debt, biggest one in your life at the time. If you were to die, would you want that to be paid off? Yes. It's a unanimous yes. But it doesn't mean you want to buy the product that they are talking about in the letter they sent you.
Right.
As an example. So those are just a couple of thoughts that are out there around the whole mortgage decision. All
right. Beautiful. I think our time is up.
Oh my goodness. Already. Well, any of our listeners that want to get more information about Potterack Capital Advisory or get acquainted with me and my team, you can go to our website, www.potterack.net. That's POTERACK.net. You'll see our historical podcast blogs on there. You can meet the team. Lots of good information on our website, as well as if you would like to more directly set up a Zoom or a phone call with me to get better acquainted. Anna Hopkins, who's worked with me for over 17 years, she knows all the answers to all the tough questions, and she directs traffic when it comes to my calendar. We're out there on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Yes. Charisse, am I missing anything?
I think you're good.
All right. I appreciate your help as always, and I look forward to our next podcast.
Thank you. Me too.
Thank you for listening to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Making It Count, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet by Ryan Potterack, visit www.potterack.net or give us a call at 704-366-5776. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Potterack Capital Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Potterack Capital Advisory does not offer legal or tax advice. Please consult the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. Nothing contained herein is to be considered a solicitation, research material, an investment recommendation, or advice of any kind. The information contained herein may contain information that is subject to change without notice. Any investments or strategies referenced herein do not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or particular needs of any specific person.
Product sustainability must be independently determined for each individual investor. Potterack Capital Advisory explicitly disclaims any responsibility for product suitability or suitability determinations related to individual investors.